Today is the 27th day of the month of Teves. We're in the middle of chapter 46, discussing all sorts of non-kosher foods. Today we'll be finishing the chapter, going from paragraph 41 through paragraph 46. We're also going to start chapter 47, going from paragraph 1 through paragraph 7. In chapter 47, we'll be discussing laws of non-kosher wine which is touched by a non-Jew. So chapter 45, paragraph 41. Again, we're not going to go into details of paragraph 41. It's talking about some other types of fruit or honey, sugar, things that have to be checked for potential infestation. So again, to look at the Sark's website, the CRC app, to, like I mentioned in yesterday's episode, to see what's relevant nowadays, the way we have to check for different bugs, mites, and worms. Paragraph 42, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch points out that if you use a knife and you cut open to a fruit and you find a worm in the fruit, then this knife has to be cleaned very well because that worm isn't kosher. So make sure that knife is cleaned well, not just for cleanliness reasons, but also because of kosher reasons. Paragraph 43. This is very interesting. We're used to thinking about bugs in fruits, maybe some vegetables, nuts, herbs. We think of fresh herbs as likely to have bugs in it. But the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch points out that sometimes fish have different worms in them. And this is actually a big thing, a big controversy in today about whether we have to be nervous about worms in different types of fish. This is called anisakis. This is Anisakis, Anisaki's fish policy. The anisakis, I believe, is a type of infestation, type of worm that sometimes is found in fish. And so to see which type of fish is an issue, I recommend, again, just looking for the Star K website. If you Google Star K anisakis or Star K worms fish, you'll pop up with a document about which types of fish you have to be concerned about, which types of fish you don't have to be concerned about. Now, of course, anytime you're buying processed fish, you're buying tuna fish, anything in a can, of course, you have to be concerned and needs a kosher symbol. But let's say you're buying fresh fish, that's where this would fall into place. You're buying fresh fish, which would not have any other kosher concern because it's not processed at all. Do you have to be worried about these anisakis, at least these worms? That's where this list that the Starkey has about, which fish you do have to be concerned about it, which fish you don't have to be concerned about it. That's when you'd follow that list. Any questions, of course, feel free to reach out to me for clarification. Paragraph 44 discusses the worms that are in cheese. So similar to what you saw about fruits, if the worms were born, the eggs hatched inside the cheese and the worms grew inside the cheese, as long as the worms didn't leave the cheese, from a halachic perspective, then they're considered kosher still, and you technically could eat that cheese. Again, it's not so relevant nowadays. I don't remember seeing cheese with worms in it, so it's not something we have to deal with on a regular basis. Paragraph 45. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch warns us over here. He says, you might think it's not a big deal. You're having some broccoli. So there's some extra protein. Let's say there's some aphids in the broccoli. So you got a little bit of extra protein. What's the big deal? He says, nope, you have to realize this is a very severe transgression. The Torah mentions a number of places to make sure to not eat creepy crawlies, to not eat worms or these bugs. And so it's a very severe transgression. And he says, not only that, eating these things could affect our neshamas, affect our souls. It's called in Hebrew timtum halev. It stuffs up our hearts, meaning it affects our souls in major spiritual ways, whether it affects our spiritual growth, it affects our connection to God, our connection to Torah. So it's something we really have to be very careful about and make sure that we're following the guidelines that are necessary to ensure that you do not accidentally or carelessly eat any of these bugs, or these creatures, or these worms or aphids that are in these different fruits, vegetables, nuts, etc. Paragraph 46. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch discusses over here rabbi shopping. You go to one rabbi, you say, this happened in my kitchen. Is this food kosher or is it not kosher? And let's say the rabbi says it's not kosher, and you really want to eat that food. So you say, you know what? I don't like what that rabbi said. I can call up another rabbi. And you call up another rabbi and say, the second rabbi, is this food kosher? This is what happened in the kitchen. And that second rabbi says, yeah, it's not a problem. You can eat that food. Says the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, guess what? That food is still not kosher. Even though the second rabbi said it is kosher, even if his analysis was more correct than the first rabbi, once a competent halachic authority determines something isn't kosher, if the question was asked and the competent halachic authority handed down a ruling about it, then that food now takes on the status of non-kosher food, even if it was, the analysis wasn't fully accurate. Therefore, rabbi shopping isn't just not a good idea, it really could create some kosher problems. He says what you could do to get around it is tell this, if you think the first rabbi made a mistake, you want to speak to the second rabbi, tell the second rabbi that the first rabbi said XYZ, you have some reason to think he made a mistake, and then let the second rabbi figure out what to do, if you should consult with the first rabbi, not consult with the first rabbi. Maybe he'll tell you this isn't, there are exceptions to this, he might tell you this is an exception, even though the first rabbi said it's a problem. With that knowledge, so I'm still telling it's okay, then you can follow the second rabbi. But rabbi shopping is, could have its own issues. So once you get, decide before you ask a question who you want to ask it to, and once you get the answer, the ruling on it, then either stick with that ruling or discuss it more with that rabbi. And if you're not so comfortable for whatever reason with that first rabbi, then at least when you go to the second rabbi, make sure the second rabbi knows they had previously discussed it with the first rabbi. Chapter 47. Chapter 47 discusses wine that was touched by a non-Jew. So just to give a bit of the background of this, the Torah says wine touched by a non-Jew is not kosher because that non-Jew may have had in mind to use this wine in an offering of idolatry, to either serve this wine to an idol or use it in a celebration of his idol or his pagan god. And in such a case, that wine becomes not only prohibited to drink, it becomes prohibited to get any benefit from. Now, really, on a biblical level, this is only a prohibition if the non-Jew was an idol worshiper. However, nowadays, many non-Jews are not idol worshippers. Some might still be idol worshippers, but many aren't. And they might not believe in Judaism, but their religion is not necessarily idolatry, in which case, if they touch wine, it would not be a problem. It would not be a problem for us to drink or get benefit from it, on a biblical level at least. However, rabbinically, it still would be forbidden, because the rabbis, they outlawed all wine touched by a non-Jew because of a concern that there was intermarriage going on. And how does intermarriage happen? They have people get together, they drink together, they have a good time together, they become good buddies, and before you know it, their children are marrying each other. And this is happening going back already a couple thousand years. This was happening. We had Jewish children marrying non-Jewish children. So we saw earlier, we talked about food cooked by a non-Jew, bread baked by a non-Jew, that those things were prohibited because of concern. Those things were prohibited rabbinically in order to make it harder for Jews and non-Jews to socialize, in order to prevent intermarriage. So too with wine, if a non-Jew touches wine, even if the non-Jew is not really an idolater, still the fact that they touched it rabbinically will make the wine prohibited, because the rabbis want to make sure that we don't socialize too much with non-Jews in order that we do not come to a situation where there will be intermarriage, God forbid. However, because it's now only a rabbinical level, most of the situations of the wine touched by non-Jew nowadays, therefore it does have some extra leniencies that the biblical level would not have. So paragraph 1 says the Shulchan Aruch that one is not supposed to use wine of a non-Jew. However, if there will be a tremendous loss, then there are situations in which it would be permitted. Again, it gets pretty technical, so make sure to speak to Rabbi if this happens, or let's say you get a shipment. You're a wine retailer. You get a shipment of wine which was not kosher or touched by a non-Jew. Then what can you do with that wine? So make sure to speak to Rabbi just to figure out how to deal with it. Paragraph 2 says the Shulchan Aruch that in a situation, again, this is not so common nowadays, but sometimes a person, there was some sort of therapy for someone who is ill to have a bath in wine. Says the Shulchan Aruch that if somebody is severely ill, then they can use wine of that a non-Jew touched to take this therapeutic bath in. But again, that's only for somebody who is severely ill. A regular person would not be able to do that. Paragraph 3. Once the wine has been cooked or Moshe Feinstein says to approximately 175 degrees, then at that level, it's not considered such high quality wine anymore. It's lower quality. So therefore, it was excluded from this decree by the rabbis. Also, there's no concern even for an idolater. If an idolater would touch this wine because it was cooked in this lower quality, an idolater would never use this in their worship, in their idol worship. So therefore, in such a situation, it's not a problem drinking this wine once it was cooked, even if a non-Jew touched it. This is why you'll very often see on bottles of kosher wine, they'll have the kosher symbol, and you'll see somewhere else in the bottle also will say mivushal, or it might even say MEV, period, which is short for mivushal. Mivushal means cooked. Once it's cooked, it's not a problem if non-Jews touch the wine. So if you have non-Jews over your house regular for meals and things of that sort, make sure that all the wine that you're buying is mivushal wine, not just kosher wine, but it says mivushal on the bottle as well. Paragraph 4. Let's say you're making a roast, and one of the ingredients of the roast is wine. So you put it all together, it's sitting on the counter before you put it into the oven, and you have a non-Jewish housekeeper, a non-Jewish cleaning person in your house, cleaning your house. And they touch this, they move it, they touch it, let's say they dip in their fingers to give it a taste or something of that sort. So would that be a problem? If this wine, assuming it wasn't cooked, it's you have wine over there touched by a non-Jew, so that you would think that would be an issue. Says the Shulchan Aruch that if the wine is mixed in, it's not discernible right now, it's just part of one of the ingredients and a whole bunch of different ingredients, then in that case, even though it hasn't been cooked yet, then it's not a problem. Once you put it into the oven, it's not going to get the status of cooked. Of course it wouldn't be a problem, but even if it was still raw sitting on your counter, it wouldn't be an issue because the wine is mixed into all the other ingredients and it's not discernible. Paragraph 5. Normally, for something not kosher to become diluted, you need a ratio of 1 to 60. However, with this wine that we're talking about, 1 to 6 is enough to make it, to nullify it, and therefore if you have a mixture which is 1 part wine, 6 parts water, even if that wine is non-kosher wine, still it would be nullified by the water, and this mixture would now have a kosher status. There is a type of wine, however, called raisin wine, where water would be poured onto raisins and it would soak in the raisins, and because that would draw out some juice from the raisins and get wine into the raisins, and there, even if the water is more than 1/6 time of the raisins, in that situation, this would have the status of wine, and it would be an issue if a non-Jew would touch it before it was cooked. Paragraph 6. Let's say you have grape seeds, or you have like some sediment of grapes, and you pour water through it, and that water now becomes like wine. That is another way of making wine, says the Shulchan Aruch, and that would have all the issues that wine would have, and so if a non-Jew would touch it, it would render it non-kosher. Paragraph 7. At what point do we say this is considered a wine? Meaning if a non-Jew touches a grape, the grape is considered wine. At what point in the winemaking process do you say, now if the non-Jew touches it, it becomes not kosher? So again, this might depend on modern day methods of making wine, but the way it used to be, at least the way the Shulchan Aruch describes it, is you have a big vat and you have all of your grapes in there and they're all blended up, or they're fermenting in there, and then you unplug the bottom. There's some sort of plug at the bottom. You unplug that, and the wine, the juice that this now wine starts pouring out of there. Says the Shulchan Aruch that until it's unplugged, it doesn't have status of wine yet. Once unplugged and a little bit wine comes out, even if you plug it back up afterwards, once you unplug it, a little bit starts coming out. At that point, not only does what's coming out have the status of wine, all the liquid in the vat has the status of wine. If a non-Jew would touch it, then it would render the entire vat not kosher. So technically speaking, you would think that until the vat is unplugged that first time, you can have non-Jews involved in the process of pressing the grapes within the vat because it doesn't yet have a status of wine. Says the Shulchan Aruch that nope, even though you think you could, you still can't do that either, because it's also rabbinically forbidden, because it gets very confusing. Was the vat unplugged yet? Was it not unplugged yet? Therefore, the rabbis made the decree that if non-Jew touches the wine, it makes the wine not kosher. They also said even if the vat wasn't unplugged yet, still you can't have any non-Jews helping you press the grapes inside the vat, squeezing them to get the wine out. This concludes today's episode. Have a wonderful day and see you on the next episode.